Sarah. Welcome, everybody. We are honored to have these amazing mamas talk with us tonight in honor of Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. It's so brave and bold for you guys to speak out and tell your stories so that you can help others feel less alone in their journey through this really, really challenging and hard time. So we thank you so much for sharing your stories. Tonight we have four amazing mamas. Shannon Spangler will be talking first, Katie Hedman, Katrina Kamek, and Mary Krista Smith are all here, and they all have had their own personal experiences with pregnancy and infant loss, and they're here to share their stories. So I will let Shannon start us off. Thank you.
Okay to unmute. I think that was a prompt from you, Sarah. Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, good. Perry mentioned, my name is Shannon Spangler. I am a local here to Park City, originally from the East Coast. My husband and I moved here 6 years ago from Los Angeles, bounced around due to work. So we're thrilled to now be rooted here, no plans to go anywhere. We've been married for 10 years. So we celebrated our 10-year anniversary this past March. And we have had, well, at least when I say we, it depends on the type of person that you're talking to. Some people say it wasn't we, it wasn't him, it was you that, went through a lot. But I don't know, I disagree. I think that he contributes as well. So we have experienced together 8 miscarriages, losing 9 babies, embryos along the way. One of those was twins. So I will lead off with a positive in that at some point it worked out and we had a daughter. So I have a 3.5-year-old daughter who is amazing. And one of the questions that was asked at the beginning was what helps you, or what has helped you get through the miscarriages. And most of my miscarriages have happened since the birth of my daughter. So she has been truly the shining light through all of those situations. I feel super blessed that that she's in my life, period, but that we were able to have her. I mean, every miscarriage that continues to happen, it is more and more evident that she's like a little miracle. So she has been a major force in helping us survive, not just survive, but also kind of just refocus on our blessings. And that, it's unfortunate to have gone through some challenging situations, but we're still really lucky. So we don't really know what the issue is with me. There's something. We've been through a number of tests. I've been through 2 cycles of IVF, 2 cycles of IUI. I've been on so many fertility drugs, oral, forgive me, vaginal, shots galore, and nothing works. Well, I shouldn't say that. I'm actually quite fertile. I get pregnant a lot. I just can't keep the babies for some reason. So I've been seeing a fertility specialist for 2.5, almost 3 years now. And it's really sad in the world of fertility treatment. There's no, at least from what I'm learning, there's no real understanding as to why people have multiple miscarriages. So I'm a big mystery, apparently. My doctor has never had a case like mine where I've had so many, and not just so many, but so many back to back. So we just keep chugging along and keep trying. We're not exactly sure if we want to continue with the big cycles like IVF for a number of reasons. But, there were questions about the relationship and how did we get through it. For us, my husband is very clinical, like, okay, it didn't work, we'll try again. Where I try to be, I want to be like that because it it's painful to feel this over and over again. Woo, here we go. I had a tissue here. But for us, it was challenging because it's hard for me as a woman. I don't know if it's a woman thing or not, but for me, you get connected to the baby right away. You start picturing everything. You start picturing where the room is going to be. You start picturing what the sibling relationship is going to be. And he didn't think of it that way. It was way more black and white. It was way more, it didn't work. So let's figure another solution. So for us, it was hard. I didn't appreciate his lack of understanding of where I was coming from. And he didn't appreciate that I couldn't just forge ahead, and get to the next step. I think recently he has been, something clicked. I don't know what it was, but he's been far more understanding and far more supportive, recognizing that it's hard and that, I need a little time emotionally to recover from it. But, we just keep trying. Like I said before, I feel super lucky that I do have a daughter already. And we continue to see the same fertility specialist. We're considering getting some additional opinions at this point because I don't know, it feels like that's the next logical step. There's some medical things going on in my family that could potentially be leading to it. So we're trying to sort that out through the University of Utah. But it's not easy. I would say the one silver lining that I found through my experience is that all of my miscarriages happened between 8 and 10 weeks. So physically, they were less demanding than some miscarriages can be, which, blessing or not, if I try to find a positive out of the situation, it was physically, it always has been physically easier for me to deal with the miscarriage. Not easy to get the pregnancy going between the IVF and the IUI and all that stuff. So I don't know. We'll see. I've tried a number of things outside of that too, like changing my diet, changing my exercise habits. Thankfully, I used to travel a lot, which caused a lot of stress. So I thought maybe it had to do with that. And then COVID hit. And I felt like, okay, this is a great opportunity. I lost almost 20 pounds. I got my food on track. I went through 2 rounds of IUI, got pregnant, and had 2 miscarriages. And I was like, and had no travel. So I was like, okay, it's not the stress of travel. It's not the stress of work. So we just don't know. We don't know what the issue is. And so if anyone, for some of the ladies that were here last week, I of course want to share my story, but I want to learn too. So if anyone has any ideas or suggestions, I welcome them. So I don't know, if this is in line with what you were hoping for. I hope so. If you have any other questions or you want me to say, mention anything else, let me know. But I appreciate the opportunity to share these stories with you all, and thank you for listening to them, because it's not an easy experience to go through. And although many women go through it, we don't often talk about it. So I appreciate the opportunity to do so.
Thank you, Shannon. That was wonderful. We really appreciate your story, and thank you for being so honest. Thank you. Katie, if you're ready to share or would like to, that would be great.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Hedman. My husband and I live just outside of Park City, well, a little more than just, between Park City and Salt Lake City. And we've been married for 4 years. We have a 2-year-old now, just over 2. He might bust in at any moment. I never know. But we had a miscarriage that we knew the miscarriage was happening in July. And I don't really know what's normal or not. This was my first miscarriage, or what you would say is a common time frame, but I started my recovery from that on September 4th. So it was a long period of time. I was told throughout the whole process of going to the ER different times through that time period that I was the 5% of all women that normally need to go through that process. It was our first miscarriage that happened. But I went the first time to the doctor for my 10-week first checkup, and they said that the baby was only measuring at 5 weeks. At that time, we kind of knew that something was wrong. They said in 2 weeks, we'll do an ultrasound, or in 1 week, we'll do an ultrasound, sorry. And so they did. And then at the ultrasound, I started spotting. And they said that the baby was still only measuring at 5 weeks. In talking to my healthcare providers, it was very much, well, maybe you were wrong on your dates. Although you had a positive pregnancy test, it was a home pregnancy test, so maybe not. So we need to wait 2 weeks and do another ultrasound and hormone level check. And so, then we're 4 weeks in when I was able to finally go get that ultrasound. It didn't check the boxes for Utah doctors based on the laws that are currently in place. So I was in a lot of pain for 4 weeks, mentally or emotionally, physically dealing with the, emotional aspects of being pregnant. I was still very nauseous and not being able to eat much. But I had a lot of back pain. And doctors told me that they were not able to do anything because they couldn't claim it an unviable pregnancy at that time. So the day after I found they were able to check those boxes and say yes, they gave me a couple different options to help my body with the process of it. The day I was supposed to go in and get the medication to help me, I ended up in the ER, bleeding quite heavily, and then sent home that afternoon with the medication. One of the questions we were asked is, what do you wish you had known? And I wish I had known the possible side effects of different options that I was given. The options that I was given, because I didn't know these were the options at the time, so I don't know if this will help someone, but were a DNC, which is a procedure that they put you under for a couple, like 2 different types of pills that you have to take, one in the hospital, one at home, or you take both at home, or you wait for your body to take care of it. I had been a month in, so I felt like the best choice was to do one of those other options. And they gave me the pills to take while I was at home. I really wish I had known what that process would look like. The pain, being told to sit on a toilet and wait, let the tissue go. If I had known what that felt like, I would have called friends to be here. So I wish I knew what that looked like, so I could call for support. Unfortunately, it doesn't end there. I spotted for 3 weeks, and then they scheduled another ultrasound to make sure my body had taken care of the tissue. The day I was supposed to go in for the ultrasound, I ended up back in the ER, hemorrhaging. for 4 hours. I wish I knew how much I was going to have to advocate, or my husband was going to have to advocate for me in the hospital. I lost so much blood. It was about 2 liters that I needed to have 2 blood transfusions. I also didn't know that blood transfusions were really hard to recover from. My whole body shut down, so I couldn't even roll over in bed for 2 days. And then I ended up, so I was in the hospital for 48 hours, was sent home and really sore from an emergency DNC and blood loss, and then was asked to go home. And then I ended up in that 5% again and back in the hospital for 5 days with an infection that they couldn't figure out what antibiotics would help. I'm in the process of working with the hospital and support from risk management at the hospital. I think that knowing that that's an option is also very important to rewrite some of their procedures and how they handle things in the hospital, especially from the ER to being rolled to the maternity floor, being asked, how far along are you? And having to explain that I had had surgery and that I was not pregnant any longer, or being asked to go to the maternity floor or go to a tower, another floor where the nurses would not know what to do with, as they wouldn't know as much what to do for me physically as, but I would emotionally not be on the maternity floor, or I could be on the maternity floor and get the care I needed, but emotionally be next to a room with, a crying newborn. So I'm working very hard with a few of the hospitals to make some changes because I don't think it should be a choice of your mental health over your physical health. So those are the things in that process, I wish I had known. I wish that I knew that it was kind of an attitude of, well, you're having a miscarriage, you'll be okay. I wish through the very beginning of that process, I had reached out for support from a care provider. So my husband and I are seeing a therapist for the trauma and the whole process, and that has been really amazing. I'm happy to share that information through Hive. I also wish I really knew, or what also helped me heal was to give myself time and permission to grieve and the loss. I felt very minimized in a lot of the process, and so that was really important to me. I also, sorry, I'm looking at my notes. I wish I knew that I would also go through postpartum, no matter what. I had pretty severe postpartum depression with my first, and I didn't really anticipate going through that with this. And even the healing of your body, the healing of emotionally and physically that comes with having a baby. When you have that baby, people are accepting of you're taking 3 months off on maternity leave. They're accepting of your need for that. And I feel like with a miscarriage, it's not as talked about or understood that that's needed, because you're still going to go through that. You still need the support system. You still need the postpartum care in a bit of a different way, but that's still a piece of this. I wasn't prepared for that, and have worked on that since. What helped also, the healing aspect of it, was giving myself time to take that postpartum time. I didn't take 3 months, but I did take a couple weeks for myself. And I know that that's not always possible, but that really helped. My partner also said, I wish I had known the connection my wife would have had, and I had thought more about that. And that we talked about some of these questions, and that was one thing that really stuck with him and stuck with me in this process, is that he really felt like I didn't realize the connection you would have right away. It definitely affected our relationships in many different ways. I think it made it stronger in some ways. Given the trauma that I went through, I was very worried about intimacy and kind of terrified for a little while about it, because I just was afraid of bleeding, or how it would feel, or what that would mean after being in the hospital and losing that much blood. I also wish, in talking to my therapist, is that hemorrhaging is a piece of what could happen during a miscarriage, and that it is very minimalized, but it can be traumatic. And so knowing how to advocate and handle that, I wish I just knew that that was what other people had gone through, because it feels very isolating and alone. So I guess in closing, if anyone needs support or talking about it, I'm here, with tears and all. But it is a hard process. We're still in the process of healing emotionally from it. I also give myself permission that, when we're ready, and if we try again, that will be a grief and an emotional roller coaster in itself, of everything that we went through, and that it's okay to feel that way, no matter at what point in your pregnancy you were in. I'm not trying to preach that. That's how I feel, and that's helped me feel that it's okay. So if anyone needs help or support in any of the steps, please reach out.
Thank you so much, Katie. All you mamas are so strong. Thank you for sharing your stories. Mary.
Hi, I'm Mary Krista Smith, and I'm really honored to be here with these strong and courageous mothers who are willing to share their stories. And I share mine today in the hopes that someone who needs to hear something that I've gone through may find something that resonates, that helps them. So I'm certainly not here to give advice, but just to share my story. And if it resonates, then that's wonderful. And if it doesn't, you can just let it go, and that's okay. My oldest child is 18, and that pregnancy was a surprise. It was effortless. It was delightful. And when she was about 3 years old, we decided that we would try for another. And I had friends around me. I had my mom group of friends, and they were like me, trying for, that next child between the ages of, 2 and 3 spread. And it didn't happen easily that time. And I really had this mindset that I wanted to do things naturally, and I really resisted going to a doctor to find out about what was going on. I'm like, if I can just eat well, exercise well, take the right vitamins, have the right mindset, then it will happen. We got pregnant when my daughter was about 5 years old. And I was really excited. And we told our parents and we told friends. Um, and at about 8 weeks, I started bleeding and I took a pregnancy test and I wasn't pregnant anymore and we lost the baby. What I remember from that time was that I was devastated and just in a deep place of grief. It was really hard for my husband to relate and understand. It was hard for him to show up emotionally. I just don't think he knew how to be there for me in the way that I needed someone to be there for me. Um, People with the very best of intentions say very hurtful things like, well, at least you weren't that far along. At least you already have a child. I'm sure this was meant to be. There must have been something wrong. I'm sure you can try again. And I know they were all just trying to help me get over my grief and sadness. But honestly, it was really, really painful to hear those comments. And I think what surprised me was that I felt a deep sense of shame. I felt like I had failed, that there was something wrong with me. But we wanted to try again. So we did. And I have to say, for the next 4 years, actually, was it 4 years? It was 4 years total. But for years, it was like, maybe we'll be pregnant this month. Let's try this month. Oh, hopefully we are. Hopefully we are. Oh, we're not pregnant. So disappointing. Okay, we're going to try again. And I felt like my whole life was in limbo and on hold as we tried and then weren't, and then were disappointed and then tried again. And then there was just this sense that I had that I was pregnant. I knew it the moment that it happened. And that was different than it was with my daughter. And sure enough, we were. And, went through all the checks, the pregnancy checkups to the doctor. And I had a midwife who I went to at the time. Because again, I wanted to do it naturally and all of those things. I was very attached to that. And at our 20-week appointment, we went to the doctor. We brought my oldest along and we had the ultrasound and, and everything was just how it should be. And then the technician looked at me and she said, "When was the last time you felt the baby moving?" And right then I knew. And she got up and she left the room. She's like, "I'll be back." And she left. And I just remember leaving my body. Like I literally went into a state of shock. The doctor came in and very clinically was talking about the ultrasound and how there wasn't any blood moving through the heart. And my daughter, who was, I think she was 5 or 6 at the time, she looked at the doctor and she said, "Is the baby dead?" And the doctor said, "Yes." So we got up and we left and we came back to Park City and they called my midwife. We went to her office and she's like, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "I want you to put me out. I want this taken care of. I do not want to be conscious for this. I cannot be present. I don't want to be present." And she looked at me and she said, "That's okay. Mary Krista will do whatever it is you want to do." But if we do that, we'll never know why. And if you think that you want to have another, you may want to know why this happened. So I went home, and my best friend at the time, she knew I was going for my 20 week, which is like when you find out the sex and all of those things. And I hadn't called her. And so she knew something was wrong. And I called her, and I told her what had happened. And she said, "What can I do for you?" And I said, "Will you come with me?" So she came with me and my husband. We went to the hospital, and they induced labor. And I delivered a sweet, precious little baby boy, 20 weeks. He was perfect, but he had the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck 5 times, and that's why he died. And I have to say that what helped me the most in that moment was having my best friend next to me. She held my hand the entire time. We prayed. We had like this sweet little blessing ceremony, and it was so precious. It was so lovely, and it was so bittersweet and heartbreakingly sad. I went home, and I had my husband call people because I just couldn't. And what was also helpful and amazing to me is all the women who came out of the woodwork, who were friends and acquaintances, who said, "Me too, I've gone through this too. I'm so sorry this happened. You're gonna be okay." And I really I clung to that, to the mothers who I knew who had gone through it and then had gone on and had babies later. And I was just amazed at how we never talk about this. It's not dinner conversation. And so I was really, really grateful to the people who called me and left messages on my answering machine back when we had answering machines, and shared their stories with me. So my body had a really hard time, like Katie. And it was very hard to tell what was emotional and what was physical. And I could tell that the people around me, my midwife, my in-laws, my parents, were all having a really hard time distinguishing that. They would say, "Do you want medication? Are you going to be okay?" Like, I think they were afraid that I was suicidal. And I didn't want medication. But I wasn't really healing. And I just knew something was wrong. And I would call my midwife and say, "There's something wrong. Like, this isn't right." And she would say, "Yeah, it is. It's fine. This is normal." And I ended up having 2 really big hemorrhaging episodes. And I would call her, I won't go into it, but it was extreme. And I would call her, and she would say, "Well, if it lasts for 2 hours, then you should go to the emergency room." And I was just lucky, honestly, that I didn't die from hemorrhaging. Um, I I eventually, after a couple of episodes, some misdiagnoses of what was going on, went in and had a DNC, and I did have retained placenta, and that's what was causing the hemorrhaging. And I, I was just in a really deep state of grief. And one of the things that I did that really helped me is I made a little altar for the baby, and I would put things on it. I had a little baby Christmas ornament, and I put it on the altar, and I'd light a candle, and I would just sit there and cry. But it gave me a place to go with my feelings. And I just can't say enough about how that practice just gave me a space to go with all of my grief. I still felt and I still feel really connected to the spirit of that child. And I would talk to them a lot at that time. And whenever I would close my eyes and imagine them, they would always be holding a baby in their arms. And I went to my friend who is a shaman for a session. I needed some spiritual help, and that's the spiritual help I needed. And she was doing a session with me, and she said, you know, your son is showing up in this session. He's right here and he's holding a baby in his arms. And I was like, I've seen that. And she's like, and he's also holding a rose. And I, you know, I think I just was on my knees praying and begging God, please let me get pregnant again, please. I mean, when I would see pregnant women, I would ache with like this pain. It was so painful. I could hardly be around anyone who was pregnant. I would have to leave. It was agonizing. And 5 weeks later, I was pregnant again. And when I was wondering if I was pregnant again, there were roses everywhere. My daughter had a recital in the rose room, and people were bringing me roses for Mother's Day. And it was like I could feel like these little signs from the universe that it was going to be okay. And I got pregnant, and I was like, screw the midwife, I'm getting a high risk OB. And I went to the University of Utah and found Dr. Branch, who was like my saving grace. And he is like the most Western high risk OB doctor. And I wanted someone who, when they looked at me, were like, I've seen everything and you're fine. Like, I really needed to trust that what I was hearing from him was that I could believe him, because I'd lost all faith in my midwife by that point. And 9 months later, I delivered Griffin. He's 9 pounds. He was 9 pounds, 13 ounces. And I have to tell you, that was the longest. I joke with people, I'm like, I was pregnant like an elephant's pregnant, because I was pregnant for 5 months. And then I wasn't pregnant for 5 weeks. And then I was pregnant again for 9 months. And when I was pregnant with Griffin, I rented a heart rate monitor, and I would use it every single day, because I'd get this like anxiety attack, like, is the baby moving? Is the baby moving? And then I put the heart rate monitor, I'm like, okay, yeah, the baby's moving. And here he is, and he is 11 years old. And so I just, you know, hope for the moms out there who are listening tonight, and who may be listening to this sometime in the future, that if you need an anchor of hope, like I really needed an anchor of hope, that maybe this can provide you an anchor of hope. And, you know, what I have learned is that as mothers, we just have this amazing capacity to love. And I feel like this experience has stretched my heart so wide open. I'm such a more compassionate person, having gone through this experience. And I'm just in awe of us as mothers. We really, you know, we bring forth life, and in that capacity, and that miraculous capacity to bring forth life, we also hold death in the same hand. And for those of us who've lost babies, we know just how close those two things are to one another. So that's my birth story and my baby loss story. Thank you for listening.
Mary Krista, thank you so much. All of you, thank you so much. I am going to introduce Katrina, and we are here with her to end this evening with her story. As I see her wiping away her tears, I'm wiping away my tears. I just really honor all of you. Katrina.
Well, shoot, friends. I just want to give you all a big sloppy hug. Like, it's so, if I just like weep my way through this, forgive me. But I'm realizing now that like I really haven't dealt a whole lot with my miscarriage. Like, I've dealt with it some. So mine was pretty recent. I went in on September 9th. We got pregnant in July with our second. Me and my husband have been married for I think 4 years now or 5, and we had a very hard time getting pregnant the first time. But luckily, I took some Clomid, and like within like 5 months of me being on that, we got pregnant with my son Jack, who's 15 months, who you may be hearing in the background, who's refusing to go to bed right now. I know. Anyway, so went in, I was 11 and a half weeks pregnant, or so I thought. Went in by myself because my husband was unable to go in with me. You know, like the nurse, I'm chatting with the nurse, yada, yada, yada. I'm like, oh, I'm so thankful. I'm still so nauseous. And I hadn't been this nauseous with my first. And I'm like, so I'm fortunate. And I even like had a prescription. Like last time I was like, it's fine and it would pass. Or I took B6 and Unisom and like was good. So I thought like, certainly I'm like so ill. Like clearly it's fine. And because also we had a hard time conceiving Jack, that I gotten an ultrasound at like 6 weeks with him, you know, and like we were like, we're good, we're golden. So this time it's like I wasn't in there till like 11 and a half weeks, and I was like, okay, well, I'm sure it's fine. Have my husband on FaceTime. I love my Dr. Clark, and he was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like he was just like, oh no. And I was like, oh shit. And then like his voice kind of gets quiet, and he's like explaining to me like baby stuff going around 5 weeks, yada yada. And like my husband didn't really know what was going on because he couldn't really hear. So I was like, John, I'll call you right back. And then, you know, he was like, okay, these are things we can do, you know, like, and I'm, after hearing some of your stories, I'm very thankful that he was like, these are the 3 things that these are like your options. We can like wait a week, have another ultrasound, you know, and, you know, check your hormone levels. We can prescribe you some medicine to dilate you, and so you can pass it naturally, or you can have a DNC. And I was like, okay. And he's like, I'm so sorry. And like, I have a lot of respect for him, and I'm thankful he told me, and he had lovely bedside manner. And then like, so he leaves, and then the nurse is like, I'm like, what is she supposed to say? But she's like, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I'm here. And I literally just said, no, I'm not okay. Like, I was like, no, like you checked me in, and like we found out the due date was going to be my birthday, and like all this. I'm like, and then I like grabbed her and hugged her, and during a pandemic, and I'm like, that probably was horrifying for her, but I was just like, I need a hug right now, you know. And then like she left, and like never in my life have I like felt more alone than I did like putting my pants back on in, you know, my gynecologist's office. Like I was like, oh, okay. So then like I walk out to the car and I call John, and like he immediately like came home, and we came home, and I am so thankful we did it. Like we're like Jackson daycare, like we're getting out, like we drove Guardsman's Pass, like we went out down to Salt Lake, we did some oyster shooters and had some wine, and just like had this lovely day together, like just like crying and like eating delicious food. Like it was just exactly, I was like, oh, I love this man so much. That was just like, we didn't even need to do anything. Like I texted my few girlfriends that knew. I texted my coworkers that I directly work with, because I was like, I told them I was pregnant. I'm like, I don't have COVID. I'm just really have a lot of morning sickness because I'm pregnant. So I told them. I took the rest of the week off. And then my husband and I chatted about it, and I was like, I don't want to be at work or be sitting on a toilet being like, is this the baby that I'm supposed to be mourning? Like, I can't deal with that. Like, so we decided to have a DNC, and like my body obviously was like, no, you're pregnant, you rah rah, like, so we scheduled the DNC for Monday, and John fortunately was able to be there, which was lovely. um I'm so glad that is the route we took. That was like a great choice for me and my husband, and he was there with me. It was lovely. When I was still like, everything went fine, and afterwards I was like, this is so random. I was like, I've been looking for a Nintendo Switch since this pandemic started. I was like, we went to frickin' Best Buy while I was still probably somewhat drugged up from the surgery, and I bought a Nintendo Switch and like played video games for a week. Like, and that was like awesome to just escape and like not deal. Like a little escapism. I was like, yes, I will play Legend of Zelda and just like chill out and not freak out about it. But I feel super fortunate. I asked our HR department, and I was like, hey, this just happened, like what kind of leave time do I take? I'll take vacation, whatever. And I got 40 hours of maternity leave, which was lovely. So I took the week. I got in to see my therapist 2 days after the DNC, which was lovely. She's fantastic, and I've been seeing her for years. And I'm also very, very thankful that like I've been going to therapy, because I feel like if I hadn't been, just for me personally, like I have tools now, because like to deal with it, it's like I didn't go down the rabbit hole of being like, I'm not good enough, my body failed me, like these things that like we just tell ourselves when like these traumatic things happen, right? Like, and it's just, then it becomes the spiral, and then you just get stuck in the spiral, and it's like, I can't get out. So it's like, my head was like, no, you didn't do this wrong. And when all these like demons are trying to like get into my brain, I was like, no, like, can't do that. Like, can't even like open that door or like peek to see who's knocking, because otherwise it would just have been awful. So now what helped after my loss? I read this really killer book when I couldn't sleep one night. I read it in one sitting. It's called The Miscarriage Map. It's a really quick read. I got it on Kindle, and it's written by a therapist, I believe. And like parts of it were like funny, parts of it were like, and I didn't realize how much I would identify like with the emotions that she was like talking about when I couldn't get pregnant and was around all these pregnant people. Like, also recognizing that through like my miscarriage process was like very eye-opening, because it's like, I remember going to one person's baby shower and I was an asshole because I was like, I can't get pregnant. Like, even though I didn't say that, but like, was just like, ugh. And I'm like, wow, there are lots of parallels here, that I didn't recognize before. And the book, there were parts of the book that were funny and made me laugh, which was nice to be able to laugh through like the trauma. What do I wish I had known? I wish I had known I was not pregnant 6 weeks before instead of like floating around thinking I'm pregnant. Like, and one of the hardest parts for me, which it's so dumb, but like it was a thing. I just switched out all my maternity clothes in my closet and dresser, and then like 4 days before the appointment, and then was like, I don't fit in any of my clothes. I don't want to wear maternity clothes because I'm not pregnant. And like, that's what I got stuck on out of like all the things. And I even said to my therapist, I'm like, athleisure wear is maternity wear. Why am I making this a thing? Like, it doesn't matter if I'm wearing like yoga pants or like maternity leggings, because they're like essentially the same exact thing. Anyway, that was like a really hard thing for me to go through. but yeah, like, and like on top of all of like this, then my mom like almost died like 2 weeks ago. So then like there was other stuff to deal with. So then like I haven't really like dealt with this. But one of the hardest things was my mom has some dementia, and she like telling her, I was like, Mom, you know, like we had the appointment and like the baby, there was no heartbeat, and she like just wasn't grasping it. And I literally just had to be like, hey Mom, remember how I was pregnant? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, I'm not pregnant anymore. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, okay, there's Mom. Like, so that was like also very hard. Just trying to like be as like graceful with myself as I am with other people is like the hardest part. Like, because it's like, any of you who have just told your story, or who I know or who I've talked to, I'm like, oh, my heart breaks for you. And then it's just like, your heart can break for yourself too. Like, and just like trying to be as kind to myself through this time as I would be with like anyone else. And it's funny, like Sunday we had a play date with uh one of Jack's little friends in his school, and they have the same birthday, and like we call them birthday buddies, and we're in the same pod. So like went over to their place and we're playing and stuff, and um I saw an ultrasound like on the fridge, and like she totally knows that I lost the baby, and like saw her pull up her maternity leggings, and like I was fine during the play date and John was there and we were all good. And then like we got in the car to drive home, and I just got like so sad. I was like, ah. And I didn't like realize I still had like these emotions like turning inside of me. Like I felt like I had like packed my little bag of like the miscarriage and like shipped it off and it was all done, you know, but it's like doesn't really work like that, you know. And like I'm like the waves, I feel like I'm no longer getting like taken out by waves, but like every now and then there's like a little like, oh, I'm still here, a little wave that just comes and like almost knocks you over, but it's like I'm still standing, I'm not gonna drown, you know. But that's what I got. That's what I got. Thank you for letting me just verbally vomit all over you guys, and cry at all of your stories, and just like be here with all of you. So thank you for providing this space.
Thank you so much, Katrina, for sharing your story. And thank you to all the moms who are so brave tonight to talk about their losses. And we really appreciate what you have shared and how you've, you know, helped this community feel heartache for yourselves, and also just appreciation for the fact that you were so willing to hopefully help somebody else who may have been going through this, and be able to be just such a beautiful light for us to listen to your story. So thank you. And I would love to just close tonight with a brief moment of silence for all of your stories, just to hold space for how amazing all of you are, for all the moms that joined us tonight. Thank you for coming and listening to these stories, and we're so grateful. So if we all just want to take a moment to appreciate all of you mothers and all of your stories, that'd be great. Thank you, everybody. That was beautiful. And we will definitely share, if anybody has any questions, we would love to share the mothers that spoke tonight have graciously offered their email addresses if anybody has questions. And we appreciate you all. So thank you so much. Sending much love to everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone. I wish you all the best.